webinar. At Silent Life, our aim is to use evidence to change the way nutrition is delivered to people who need it most. My name is Breda Gavin-Smith, and I'm the Global Public Health Nutrition Manager. Today, I'm particularly excited to moderate this session because it's both, I guess, the start of something and the end of something. We've gathered some fantastic speakers, but it's also the end of what has been hard work for the last 12 months in pulling all of this together around nutrition profiling. I'd like to acknowledge my colleague Kesso, who is our research manager, and Daniel, who is Sight and Live's food science specialist in Ghana, for all their work and support today. Also, a big, huge thank you to Nola, who's our communications guru, for getting so many people engaged to join today. We know that the availability of affordable, nutritious, safe, and tasty food is certainly not a given for many. Let me give you an example. Abina, 6 months pregnant and with 2 other children living in a small township outside Accra, knows this better than most. She does not need a report to tell her that when she tries to buy healthy food at the market, the cost to her weekly basket increases incrementally. Or, like the 3 billion others globally, she knows that a healthy diet is simply unattainable. As a mother, this is heartbreaking, as it is for any mother. She understands how fundamental good nutrition is for her unborn baby, for her, and for all her children. Her oldest daughter was born with a low birth weight, struggles to keep up in school, and is often home sick. Abina knows this reduces her daughter's chance of getting a good job, and the cycle of poverty continues. How do we change this? We know it requires broad engagement across the whole food chain, and there will be many elements, tools, techniques, and knowledge that needs to come together. Nutrient profiling is just one of these tools that we will discuss today. One that we envisage can be an important technique to engage both governments and the private sector, particularly SMEs, on what a healthy food may look like in Ghana or Rwanda or Malawi, for example. We also see that nutrient profiling can be incorporated into product development considerations, policy level discussions, and incentives to produce healthy foods that are affordable, safe, tasty, and importantly, culturally appropriate. So let's get started and introduce our first speaker. But before I hand you over to Iman, a few points to note. Please add your questions to the Q&A box, and throughout the webinar, you can vote for your favorite, which will help identify questions to prioritize for the panel discussion, which will last for about 15 minutes after all the presentations have concluded. Please keep us busy and remember to also indicate who the question is for. We will also give the speakers a 1-minute countdown so that we ensure we have enough time at the end to have as many questions as possible, because we have such a big group of people on this webinar today. So I am delighted to introduce Iman, who is a real nutrition powerhouse. Iman is a senior advisor to and a former director of the Institute of Nutrition, Mahidol University, Thailand. She holds the position of associate professor at Johns Hopkins University and is board chair of IFPRI and board member at Sight and Life. Iman will take a few minutes to provide more context for the work we've been doing and to show you how we will be progressing it over the next coming months. Iman, over to you.
Thank you very much, Breda, and thank you. Greetings, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to bring you back to the year 2015, when all countries of the world committed on the Sustainable Development Goal, and one of them is to end malnutrition in all its form by 2030. How to get there is definitely a challenge, particularly for the low and middle income countries. And you have heard what Breda has said. It's a heartbreaking story. And why is that? It's because in those settings, multiple burden of malnutrition prevails. So from undernutrition, micronutrient deficiency, obesity, and non-communicable disease, they're all there. The example of having a coexistence of stunting and obesity in the same individuals, likely to have inadequacies of micronutrients, which are essential minerals, vitamin and minerals, show that this is really a challenge. COVID-19 pandemic this year brings everything to the top. The stark reality, something has to be done because the situation is worsened, threatening lives of children and mothers. One of the proposed solutions over the years has been to have healthy and sustainable diet. Now, in 2019, the Eat Lancet Commission recommend reference diet. That has been shown primarily to not working well with low middle income countries, too expensive. And also the call to reduce animal foods in order to cut down excess fat and calories as well as carbon footprints fits the context of the countries like high income countries where these are excess. But in low middle income country, the diet, which is plant-based already, in order to increase the protein quality and bioavailability, which is absorption and utilization of key micronutrients like iron, zinc, vitamin A, you need an adequate intake of animal foods. So here comes the issue. It's a one size does not fit all, and context matters. Because this is a holiday season, I just want to say low middle income countries has a wish list. And that wish list is for a food-based approach. What is the innovation that could provide healthy food choice to address the multiple burden of malnutrition? A solution that's affordable by the population. And if it's generate income too, wow, bingo, win-win. Because you probably have heard, the budget from this government are very limited. So here we go. Who can make that wish come true? Here comes Sight and Life. For mandate of Sight and Life is to deliver the science-based and economically viable innovation to address malnutrition. The strategy links public to private sector to come up with the science-based solution to benefit consumers. There are 3 stages that they work on this. First of all, to translate nutrition science into practice and policy, then build and support public and private partnership in nutrition, and then viable business model to be developed to scale. So one of the programs that fits this perfectly, and Breda has already preamble on this, it has to do with the importance of nutrient profiling, which is the science-based tool that guides consumption based on nutrient composition of foods. It has a potential. It's been used a lot in high-income country contexts. But we are, and you will hear the speaker, several of them, saying something about how can this be adapted to fit the low and middle income country setting and makes that wish come true for this holiday season. And I don't beyond. So what we would like to see is that here is an example that could also shed light. So the example that you will hear about has to do with a program called Obasima Seal in Ghana, which is by Sight and Life. But you also will hear a lot of others from the other experts about the views how we can make this application in the low middle income country setting. And here's the hope for the coming years. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best. Enjoy.
Thank you so much, Iman, and you were exactly on time. So thank you. You were a very well-behaved speaker. Thank you so much for setting the context so well. Thank you. So now I would like to move on to Professor Drunowski. Adam is the director of the Center for Public Health Nutrition and professor of epidemiology at the University of Washington. He's authored over 300 research publications. And when we started to think about this topic at Sight and Life, Adam was the first person that came to mind, and we were delighted when he agreed to work with us to bring this to life through the Obasama example in Ghana, which he will share with you. Adam, over to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for this introduction. Am I going to be seeing the slides on the screen?
Yes, Nola will share them.
So my talk today is about nutrient profiling, and the question that I'm asking is whether or not we are forgetting about the low and middle income countries. So there is an outline that I want to follow. First of all, I want to start with the WHO position. Can I have the next slide with the outline? This one. WHO says that the whole purpose of nutrient profiling is to facilitate adherence to dietary guidelines. And then things become very simple. Country-specific dietary guidelines recommend healthy diets. Healthy diets are composed of nutrient-dense or nutrient-rich foods. And then those foods are identified and ranked using what else? Nutrient profiling. So there is a give and take between the dietary guidelines and nutrient profile models. One exists to serve the other. Next slide. So Ghana is in the process of developing its dietary guidelines, but I took some data from a report back in 2010 published by the Ministry of Health. This component deals with carbohydrates and proteins. And notice here that the document mentions both foods and nutrients. Yes, carbohydrates, plant proteins, but also whole grains and specific food sources, whole cereals, oats, millet products, beans, then carrots, dried beans, and peas. It is a combination of food-based approach and nutrient-based approach. And this is where the give and take comes in. Next slide. Because then you need to deconstruct those healthy food choices. You have foods to promote and foods to limit. The foods to promote are whole grains, vegetables, fruit, meat, legumes, plants and beans, and fortified foods. And of course, there is going to be iodized salt in various forms, including bouillon cubes and others. And then foods to limit are the ones that provide empty calories, fat, sugar, and salt. And by the same token, you have nutrients to encourage: fiber, vitamins and minerals, protein, but attention to the amino acid quality, iron, iodine, and then nutrients to limit are total fat, saturated fat, trans fat, total, added or free sugar, more about that later on, and sodium. So foods to promote, nutrients to encourage. Foods to limit, nutrients to limit. Nutrient profiling, by its definition, deals with the items on the right, although foods and ingredients are creeping into nutrient profiling. Next slide. So nutrient profiling can be based on nutrients to limit only, in which case you focus on sugar, fat, and sodium. And a lot of rich country nutrient profiles do exactly that. They deal with calories, fat, and sugar content of food, and they treat calories as a negative nutrient. It is bad to have calories. That is very much the rich country approach, which does not really apply to low and middle income countries where hunger, undernutrition, and nutrient deficiencies are still pervasive. So you would think that a good nutrient profiling model might have nutrients to limit as well as nutrients to encourage. And the nutrients to encourage would be protein, fiber, calcium, iron, zinc, vitamin A, iodine, and others. So let's go to an example here. Next slide. And I'm going to take the Nutri-Score system, which is common in the European Union. It is actually a system that was developed in the United Kingdom and then was claimed for its own by the government of France. This is a classic rich country model. You have on the negative side, energy, saturated fat, total sugar, and sodium. So those are the bad points. And the higher the energy content of a food per 100 grams, the more saturated fat, the more sugar, the worse the score. On the positive side of the equation are the beneficial nutrients, protein, fiber, and then the food's content of fruits, vegetables, legumes, and nuts. Notice here that the protein quality is not taken into account. Any protein will do. The more protein per 100 grams, the higher the score. The score tops out at 8 grams of protein per 100 grams, which is not a lot of protein. Animal products have much, much more. They are not scored extra by Nutri-Score. And then you have fiber and the other components, and the whole score is a combination of all of those. But in fact, the Nutri-Score is pretty much driven by energy density, sugar and fat. They are energetic, they drive energy density. Having energy and sugar and fat in the same score means that the score captures energy density and it does not capture nutrient density. Next slide. So here I started doing some very preliminary work with the United States cereals. On the vertical axis, you see energy density of foods. On the horizontal one are Nutri-Score points. The points are coded from green, that's good, to yellow, not so good, to orange, to red, really bad. So this is the nutrient density as captured by Nutri-Score. And on the vertical axis, you have energy density, porridges versus dry cereals. And then on the next slide, you have proof that the Nutri-Score really captures added sugars, the left panel, and it captures the combination of added sugar, saturated fat, and sodium on the right panel. So the correlation between the Nutri-Score points and the energy, fat, and sugar content of foods is pretty good. But then you may ask, what about nutrients? What about fortified cereals? A lot of those cereals in the US are fortified. Will they be captured by Nutri-Score and will they be given higher points by Nutri-Score? Well, actually, Nutri-Score higher points are bad. So will they be given lower points by Nutri-Score? It's very complicated. Next slide. In fact, what happens is that the nutrients in fortified cereals are not really captured at all. And we come to the same situation in Ghana. So here there is an alternative system. So here we have the system that I developed, the Nutrient-Rich Food Index, which is actually based on nutrients to encourage as well as nutrients to limit. The nutrients to limit are the same ones as in Nutri-Score. Saturated fat, I have added sugars and sodium, but here this score includes protein and fiber and vitamin A and vitamin C and vitamin D, calcium, iron, potassium, and magnesium. And you might think that it would better capture nutrient density of fortified foods. And of course it does. Next score. Next slide. This one. So here you see Nutri-Score points, same as before, but now on the vertical axis, I have the Nutrient-Rich Food Index. The fortified foods are high up above. They are captured by the Nutrient-Rich Food Index. They are not given any extra points by Nutri-Score. So this becomes a problem when it comes to cereals in Ghana. Notice here that the NR9 subscore includes protein, fiber, but also vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, calcium, iron, potassium, magnesium, not captured by Nutri-Score at all. We need a different score more adapted to the needs of low and middle income countries to capture the fortification of foods. Next slide. So this is a profiling project in Ghana. So what I'm saying is that the rich country nutrient profiling models have penalized calories by giving lower ratings to energy, fat, sugar, and salt. And then following the WHO principle that nutrient profiling models ought to address a public health problem, I would say that the problem in places like Ghana is not obesity, not yet. It's coming, but not yet. We still need to remedy inadequate intakes of vitamin A, B vitamins, folate, calcium, iron, iodine, zinc, and high quality protein. And fortification really ought to be reflected in new nutrient profile scores adapted to local needs. And as I say, this absolutely follows the WHO principle that nutrient profiling ought to address an identified public health problem. The problems are not the same. It is not that one solution fits all. Next slide. So here we're looking at fortified foods in Ghana. On the horizontal axis, you have Nutri-Score points. On the vertical axis, you have my negative subscore. Notice again that the negative subscore, the nutrient-rich score, and Nutri-Score are pretty much the same. The Obasima products are in red. Fortified porridges or some porridges based on maize and soy are in blue, and some other fortified baby cereals are in orange, and then lower scores, higher nutrients to limit content is going to be for the cookies and other sweetened grains, bakery goods. Next slide. So here, we're now looking at the nutrient-rich score. Notice that what we're seeing is that the nutrient-rich score does capture the fortified products, including the Obasima ones. Nutri-Score, not so much. So here, this nutrient-rich subscore is developed specially for Ghana, and it has protein, fiber, vitamin A, thiamine, vitamin D, folate, calcium, iron, and iodine, all calculated as percent daily values per 100 grams. Let's move on to the next slide. And here you see again, the score is capturing nutrient density of foods. This time it was recalculated per 100 grams. Again, see the nice correlation between Nutri-Score points, the nutrient-rich, and the nutrient-rich captures nutrient density of foods so much better. Next slide. So there are steps towards nutrient profiling. You can call me for any information if you so wish. In developing a nutrient profile model, I generally follow the standards and procedures established by the EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority. In order to be able to do nutrient profiling, there is one prerequisite. You have to have local nutrient composition databases that flag all the foods and nutrients of interest. No databases, no nutrient profiling. You need to have local estimates of nutrient deficiencies and nutrient excesses, because nutrient profiling needs to address a local public health problem. You need to have local or codex nutrition standards, and ideally some dietary intakes and health data. And then, given that affordable nutrient density is the key these days, data on food prices for affordable nutrient density metrics would be useful. On the next slide, I just want to show you that I have been using the FAO Codex nutrition standards to develop those nutrient profiling schemes. They're on the next slide. And those are the standards for protein, fiber, vitamin A, vitamin D, and so on. And they are drawn from international agency data sets. So these are standards for nutrients to encourage, and these are standards for nutrients to limit. And this is what you would select for developing your own local or regional nutrient profile model. Next slide. So just some final suggestions for nutrient profiling for the future. When you develop a nutrient profile, make it regional. What are the main food sources in the population that are of interest nutritionally, that provide nutrient density at low cost, or that could be fortified? Make it relevant, simple, keep it balanced. And then, of course, keep it affordable and make it culturally relevant. Foods need to be nutrient rich, absolutely, but they also need to be socially and culturally acceptable and appealing. And then link up the model to dietary guidelines and to health outcomes whenever possible. So one last slide is a summary slide. And again, here we're saying that rich country NP models seem to penalize calories, and those need to be rethought for low and middle income countries where hunger and undernutrition continue to be issues of public health concern. That is on the next slide. And the issue for low and middle income country agencies is to balance the threat, future threat of excess empty calories, it's there, against the continuing current danger of undernutrition and micronutrient deficiencies, which are still present. And as always, affordable nutrient density is key. And based on the FAO report 2020, it appears that healthy diets are unaffordable to many people in every region of the world. So affordable nutrient density provided by whatever means is the way to go. So I'm going to finish here. Thank you for your attention.
Great, thank you so much, Adam. Before I hand you over to Saskia, can I just remind everyone to send us your questions in the Q&A box, and also remember to vote for your favorite questions. So really do keep us busy and get those questions in, that would be great. Saskia's presentation, Adam, will nicely complement your discussion around affordability. Saskia Depi is the Senior Technical Advisor for Nutrition at the World Food Programme, where she leads systems analysis for the nutrition team. Saskia will focus on how improving micronutrient content of specific foods improves affordability and should be considered in dietary diversity indicators. Saskia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Yeah, let me straight go into the next slide, because this dives into the SOFI report that Adam just finished with. And as he already mentioned, there are 3 billion people who cannot afford the cheapest healthy diet, which is a diet based on food-based dietary guidelines. If you go a step lower, 1.5 billion are not able to afford a diet that just meets the nutrient needs. So with less money, you cannot afford a healthy, and you may be able to afford nutrient adequate, but maybe not. And then the further step down is the energy sufficient diet. And in the lower section, you can see what the numbers are like in different countries. But the nutrient adequate diet in low income countries, 60% can already not afford it. So meeting the nutrient needs is the most pressing concern as we go towards diets that meet the food-based dietary guidelines completely. So we have a lot of reason to make sure that the nutritional needs are met, and we need to find ways to do so. And there's also a large variation of non-affordability within countries. So here I'm showing you the analysis done by our systems analysis for nutrition team at the World Food Programme with our FNG analysis, fill the nutrient gap. And I'm highlighting here Ghana because we'll now take a closer look at the Ghana results. So for Ghana in 2015, we found non-affordability subnationally to range from 12 to 78%. And the 78% was in the northern part of Ghana. It's got to do with the range of foods that are available, their costs, but also income. So that all together drives the non-affordability. And before we go to Ghana, also a quick look at what's happening with COVID. And because of reductions of income, there's a reduction of food expenditure, and we see the non-affordability increasing. So this shows an analysis that we've done together with David Laborde from IFPRI. And you can see that the proportion of the population in low and middle income countries that can afford a nutrient adequate diet went down from 64 to 57. And you can also see that the proportion of non-affordability of different segments is increasing. So the depth of non-affordability increases. So then what can we do about that? Well, there's different things that can be done, and they break down in those 4 categories. There's, of course, targeted interventions for vulnerable individuals, with some examples, including fortification of foods for specific target groups. There is increasing the availability of nutritious foods and increasing the nutrient content of foods, which is, again, where fortification comes in. And there is work to be done on livelihoods and income. So back to Ghana, to the northern region, where we found that non-affordability of 78%. You can see here different individuals in a household, what their share is of the lowest cost nutritious diet. And you can see that the adolescent girl would need 30% of that household cost, and the woman who's breastfeeding needs 35%. This really points to their vulnerability to deficiencies, like you also highlighted, Greta, in your introduction. And these costs amount to 78% unable to afford in Ghana in 2015 in the north. So then later we did a modeling for different Obasima products, the Cheeto sauce, the milk biscuits, and the Tomfita porridge. And we looked at adolescent girls in the northern region. The cost of a nutritious diet would be 2.76. This is the currency in Ghana. If a fruit and egg voucher was given, and that was for fruit, 92 grams of palm fruit, and 3 eggs, so it's quite a substantial voucher, this would be the reduction of the cost that the rest of the diet would still need to meet. Orange fresh sweet potato, another one we looked at, this was 245 grams. And then we looked at giving for free Tomfita, the milk biscuits, or the Shambasito. And you can see that they all also reduced the cost to some extent. And that's really depending on what are the nutrients that it provides and how much. Like the sauce is just 15 grams. The biscuits are 40, and the Tomfita we took at 100 grams. So then we said, well, they can be made available in different ways. So Tomfita can be in the market at the market price, or it could be provided for a voucher, with a voucher. So if it's at the market price, it wasn't so cost competitive to other foods available at their price in the market. But of course, if people prefer the Tomfita over some of the other foods that our model picks up, then still it's a good carrier of the micronutrients. For the Lola milk biscuits, you can see the cost reduction of different ways of providing access to the right. And then we also looked at, well, what if a super cereal, which is what WFP provides in many countries and also can be produced in Ghana, if that was provided in different ways, complementing 2 staple meals or complementing 1 staple meal, and replacing 1 meal with these fortified foods gives a better cost reduction. So it's also about what is the dietary pattern. I'm just showing you this guidance that WFP put out for the nutritional composition of complementary foods, just to say we really need to encourage production of foods that meet a certain standard. And having a nutrient profiling, we can set a target, and with this we can also provide specific guidance to manufacturers on what would be good to have in a product that you consider putting on the market. Another important indicator is dietary diversity. And dietary diversity is collected as a proxy for adequacy of micronutrient intake. So at WFP, we use 2 dietary diversity indicators. One is the regular one, which doesn't capture fortified foods. And then there is one that we've modified, and we've said, well, these fortified foods, such as the super cereal, is such a good source of micronutrients that actually it should fall in category E in the middle, meat, poultry, and fish. So we're showing you here a comparison. To the left, you see the number of food groups with the standardized method, and with the method where we classify the super cereal as an animal source food. And of course, you get more, you shift that distribution to the right. And to the right at the bottom, you see that you have like 10% more women meeting supposedly an adequate micronutrient intake, because we have now valued that micronutrient-rich food. So far, we're only doing this for WSP's foods, but we definitely need criteria to say, well, which other foods in the market could be classified as a high enough carrier of micronutrients, so it could go into that category as well. So conclusions, the non-affordability of nutritious diets really increases the risk of micronutrient deficiencies. Fortified foods can make a substantial contribution to reducing them, and the fortification has to be comprehensive. The acceptability and the actual amount consumed of fortified foods, and in addition to what, that determines the contribution to the total intake of those foods. And dietary diversity indicators, we need to develop a way that they can capture the contribution from fortified foods as well. And that's also where nutrient profiling and the thinking about what is adequate can come in to support the development of a good dietary diversity indicator that also captures the contribution from fortified food. Back over, just honoring our partners and our donors for our Fill the Nutrient Gap work. And back over to you, Brenda.
Great. Thank you, Saskia, for that really great thought-provoking presentation. Dr. Essie, we'll hand it over to you. Dr. Essie is the Director of Nutrition for the Ghana Health Services under the Ministry of Health, and we're looking forward to hearing her thoughts from the Ghanaian Health Services perspective. Dr. Essie, over to you. And just make sure you're unmuted, Dr. Essie.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And my warm greetings from Accra, Ghana. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, so in the next 5 or so minutes, I'm going to talk about the malnutrition situation in Ghana to put all the discussions around Ghana in context. By way of background, Ghana is increasingly facing a double burden of malnutrition, which is the overlapping occurrence of overweight and obesity on one hand, and undernutrition, including stunted growth, wasting, and different forms of macronutrient malnutrition coexisting within the same community, household, or individuals. We have realized that progress towards achieving key global targets have shown varying degrees of progress. Although, for example, we are on course to meet some targets such as stunting and wasting, there are large geographic and socioeconomic disparities. Next one, please. Can I have the next slide, please? As you can see on this slide, there are major nutrition challenges that we are grappling with. And as I indicated, stunting has seen a lot of reduction, but currently stands at 18%. And there are regional disparities, which I'll show in a bit. There is overweight and obesity, which is increasing in the country. Anemia in women of reproductive age, and particularly in adolescent girls, remains very high and has persisted over a long period. We are dealing with the fact that due to several factors, exclusive breastfeeding rates are actually declining, and minimum acceptable diet is accessible to very few children and currently stands at 12%. Wasting remains a problem and it seems to be rising, and currently is above the World Health Assembly and the SDG targets, which is around 7%. Next one, please. Yeah, so on your screen, you can see the progress that the country has made over the last 2 decades, looking at the various indicators of undernutrition among children. we have reduced stunting from as high as about 3% to 18%. And you can see the rates among the other indicators. And the 18% is indeed below the African regional average. However, the work is not yet done. Next one, please. And some of the determinants of the situation that I have shown, as I have indicated, is the fact that exclusive breastfeeding rates are not doing well as we desire. Early initiation stands at 52%, and minimum meal frequency is 41%, and minimum diet diversity is 23%, whilst the minimum acceptable diet is at 12%, and continued breastfeeding is falling. Next one, please. Yeah, so on the quality of the diet, and just to make the point about the disparities, on your screen, you can see that we are making some progress between 2014 and 2017 figures. But as you can see, between those who live in rural and urban communities, you can see wild the disparities, an indication of issues around equity. Next one, please.
Dr. Essie, just a reminder, you have 1 minute. Thanks.
Yeah. And on the situation of nutrition and COVID, as expected, we are seeing that it is having effect on key services that is significant or essential for women and children. And a lot of work is being done, including analysis of the situation and also development of nutrition response. Next one, please. And just to touch on the labeling issues, the Ghana Food and Drugs Authority, together with the Technical Advisory Committee, is doing a lot of work, including screening and making sure that no false claims are made. I think I will end it here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Essie. That was for your presentation. I'm sorry, I know we could talk for a lot longer, but there's many questions also coming in from Ghana for you that I hope you'll have the chance to also answer. So our last speaker is Samuel Abu, and he is the founder and CEO of Yidin Agro Group of companies in Ghana. His company is part of the Obasama Seal, and he is a passionate advocate for nutrition, not only in Ghana, but globally. Samuel, look forward to hearing your perspective from an SMEs. Oh, Samuel, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you. So, as brother indicated, I'm Samuel Kwame Timadu, and I work with Yidin. I'm speaking on the private sector role in fighting micronutrient malnutrition using the Obasama products in Ghana. All the first speakers that spoke are experts in health, in nutrition, and in everything. But how do we package all that they have said in a food pack, affordable for the consumer? That is where the private sector comes in a form of a public-private partnership to really put products that are in the right nutrients, in the right composition, affordable to the consumer. And that is what Obasama project is all about. It's a public-private partnership that tries to bring many private sectors in Ghana together and drive nutrition. Next slide. What is the role of the private sector? the private sector have to identify and source financing in putting up a processing capacity. That's one thing that Obasima in the early stages try to help some companies do by Daniel trying to bring on board some mixers and all that. Regulatory compliance in every system and in every country and jurisdiction, food is regulated. How does the private sector appreciate the regulation? And the Obasima project in Ghana is again doing so well in this area where they often act between the private sector and the regulatory body to try to see how certification and everything is facilitated and processed. The private sector also have to come to terms with the right product development. Product development, what and what goes into it. And not only for the Obasima project, but I again want to speak also to the Ajinomoto Nutrition Ghana project in Ghana, which we are also in partnership with them. And that product development for Cocoa Plus, for instance, started with Yeden, the University of Ghana, the Nevans Creswell Foundation, the Ajinomoto, and a couple of institutions, and how the efficacy of the product tested by the University of Cape Coast and all that. Same thing with Obasima product. They will come around, help you formulate products, go test it, send it to Breda and team in Switzerland and in Germany to do the shelf life and all those things are roles that the private sector has to come. But in the context of this PPP under the Obasima project, there's been some facilitation. When the product is developed.
Just last minute warning, Samuel, sorry. You've got one more minute.
Okay.
Thank you.
And when all the product is done, how do we get it to the market? Route to the market, pricing, marketing, promotion, and all that, which again, under the Obasima project, by the support of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the logo is being promoted for consumers to know. And also the products are now being dropped on some commercials and all that. When all this is said and done, I think the private sector and the public sector can come together and place in the market affordable, convenient products that are nutritious to solve the public health problem that Dr. Isi and related speakers have spoken about. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Samuel. And you mentioned something there around the work we have testing food products in Switzerland and Germany and having to bring the food products, which is definitely something that I know we talk a lot about, that there isn't the capacity in Ghana or in many African countries to do the testings there. So that's definitely a really big challenge for SMEs that we have certainly recognized. So we have 10 minutes and thank you all. There's been lots of questions coming in and you've been voting for your favorite. If we just maybe, Adam, I think I'll start with you. You seem to have got the most points for the first question. Understanding the desirability of including micronutrient content in profiling models, but is there not a risk of nutri-washing where products of poor macronutrient composition are sanitized by means of fortification? I'm sorry to start you off with a really hard question, Adam.
No, that's an excellent question. I was just looking at that very briefly. So nutrient profiling gives you the relative healthfulness of a given food. And let's face it, some foods have got nutrients which are problematic. My favorite example is cheese, because cheese has got concentrated protein. It has a lot of calcium, but it also has saturated fat and sodium. So is cheese nutri-washed by extra protein? I don't know. I think the right approach is to have nutrient profiling systems that balance nutrients to encourage and nutrients to limit. And at the same time, we need to watch out against fortifying salt. And yet we do have doubly and quadruply and quintuply fortified salt. We should not be fortifying sugar. I have issues with fortifying jelly beans with everything. So I think the right approach is to have foods as opposed to sugar and salt being fortified, which I think is the Obasima approach. And I think at the same time, we need to balance the positive nutrients against some content of nutrients, which are nutrients to limit in rich societies. Yes, there's no escaping that. We are consuming too much fat, sugar, and salt. And industry has the responsibility of making sure that the low-cost foods produced are not just cheap, empty calories of no nutritional value. That is industry responsibility. Yes, it is.
Great. Thank you, Adam. Adam, another one for you, and then I will give you a break. How does this indicator apply when nutrient information for specific foods is missing?
Yes. As I said, no information, no nutrient profiling. You have to have two sets of data. One is nutrient composition of the food supply, what's out there in the marketplace, and some data on consumption to know whether or not the fortified foods are making any difference to what people are consuming. So those data are essential. There was a question, for example, about zinc. The choice of various nutrients is governed by the availability and limitations of the data. So it is what it is. No data, no profiling.
Great, thank you, Adam. So my system keeps moving up and down. So Saskia, I'm finding a question for you. A bit similar, I guess, to Adam's. It says there is an increasing consideration of double duty actions to address the double burden of malnutrition. One tenet of this has been that actions addressing one side of malnutrition should not contribute to the other side. What was the consideration made for fortification of high sugar items like biscuits and the risk that this may contribute to overnutrition among some parts of the population?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So that referred to the milk biscuit that is one of the Obasima products in Ghana. Yeah, I'd like to take us one step back. I think when we talk about unhealthy diets, we often think about a diet high in unhealthy foods. But we should also recognize that a diet that is largely staple-based because of poverty, has very little diversity, is also a very unhealthy diet. It doesn't meet our needs for nutrients and diverse foods. So then we have to make incremental steps to closing the gaps. And a biscuit of serving of like 40 grams is not gonna cause overweight or obesity. This is a small contribution as part of a larger diet. And if that is very commonly, it's in the market, then it is a good vehicle to fortify. Now, it's not something you want to promote a very high consumption of, but an intake in moderation of this product that's fortified, it has a role in where the consumption and the nutritional deficiencies in Ghana are. So it's not an easy matter, and we should be cautious of where the situation is and where the situation should end up and how we may get there. But we should not underplay the nutritional deficiencies of diets that lack diversity and the high risk of micronutrient deficiencies and all their consequences.
Great, thank you, Saskia. Adam, this one was for you, which now it's moved again. Oh, here we are. Adam, it says, we have discussed different approaches before. Why have you chosen to use the nutrition profiling systems such as Nutri-Score or NR9 and not consider product-specific nutrition profiling systems such as Choices or WHO?
I just typed the answer to that. I did do that. And only one cereal, Inca Perina, which is the soy corn mix, passed the Choices criteria. So as a result, I was not able to get a gradient because if one product passes and 43 fail, then this does not give you a good comparison metric for comparing products. But yes, other nutrient profiling systems could be considered. There was a question here about category specific, and this category was cereals and cereal-based products. For example, a system based on a protein type food would take protein quality into account, which I did not do here. So category specific models allow you to select best of class for a given product category. We don't want to be comparing, say, cookies to strawberries. We want to be comparing the best of class products of comparable affordability and perhaps different nutrient density. So this is why category specific models are useful.
Great, thank you, Adam. And Saskia, maybe you can take this one. Can we expedite actions on generating good quality nutrient composition data in our countries, bearing in mind the low level of research funding in low and middle income countries, and most nutrition researchers are self-sponsored?
Yeah, that's really pointing to a resource limitation. I like to also encourage regional efforts there. So join forces and expand the food composition tables that are there. And you also look at the possibility to include information from other data sources, such as the USDA food composition table.
Great, thanks, Saskia. So we've time for one last question before we wrap up. So Adam or Saskia, I'm happy for either of you to take it. Who do you see nutrient profiling being used by in low and middle income countries? Are we aiming for academia, government, or food companies for labeling? And do you expect to increase healthy choices by consumer based on nutrition profiling labels? Basically, what would be the key purpose of a nutrient profiling, and who do you think should be responsible, to develop and use it? So I think it's a really good summary question to end with.
It's a terrific summary question. So nutrient profiling originated with the hope that it will inform the consumer in a supermarket setting. Since then, nutrient profiling has changed and is now being used by companies for reformulation, not labeling so much, reformulation, innovation of products. And I think the contribution of nutrient profiling to public health will be exactly that: product innovation and reformulation for better nutrient density. Not so much labels at point of sale. Other things are fundamental to changing public health.
Saskia, do you have anything to add? No? Great. Okay. Thank you all so much for the great discussion and for taking the time to join us today. I think, as we said at the beginning, today's discussion we see as the aim of catalyzing further debate on the issue of nutrient profiling. And I think you can see by the range of questions, it's definitely still very much up for debate and a lot of questions to be answered. We will be developing a special report in the first quarter next year, where we'll bring together key thought leaders to continue to share and learn from all actors. And we would love to hear more from you. So please do fill out the survey that Nola has shared to add your voice to today's discussion, and also to have your voice heard for the next steps and what you think they might look like. And Nola will also share it with all the participants tomorrow via email. So thank you all very much for joining, and have a great evening.